A major blow to Fani Willis's case against former President Donald Trump. A Georgia judge is now dismissing 6 charges in her election interference indictment against the former president and his former associates. Let's go live to Jonathan Serrie with more details. Jonathan.
Yeah, this ruling came down this morning. Judge Scott McAfee struck down a total of 6 counts in DA Fani Willis's election interference case against former President Trump and 5 of his associates. Those associates include former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, Ray Smith, Bob Cheeley, and Mark Meadows. The quash counts have to do with charges related to solicitation of violation of oath of office. The judge writes, as written, these 6 counts contain all the essential elements of the crimes, but fail to allege sufficient detail regarding the nature of their commission. Rudy Giuliani's lawyer issued this statement, quote, the quashing of these 6 counts, 3 of which were against Mayor Giuliani, was expected. There simply was not enough detail to put the defendants on notice of what to defend against. Former President Trump's legal team said the judge made the correct legal decision. We should point out this ruling is separate from another high-profile issue the judge is still considering, a defense motion to have the DA disqualified from prosecuting the case because of Fani Willis's romantic relationship she had with Nathan Wade, one of the special prosecutors she hired to assist her with the case. A ruling on that issue is expected by the end of this week. Kayleigh?
Thank you, Jonathan. So, Emily, I was reading a footnote. It said counts 2, 5, 6, 23, 28, and 38 are quashed, and it appears that it's for lack of specificity. So how monumental is this in the case?
Well, the error itself is colossal. And I just want to make sure that I send the message appropriately of what a rookie mistake it is. Remember, first year in law school, you learn about the standards of pleadings. You learn how important specificity is. The same as well goes for warrants. The same as well goes for subpoenas, right? We sort of talk about that a lot. And the point is that it is fundamental. And Mayor Giuliani said it in his response right there. He said, because without it, the defendant doesn't know what to defend against. So now we know why it's so important to have that specificity. And the fact that on a pleading, which is your initial threshold step, a district attorney failed to do so, to me, just hallmarks what a rookie she is, how sloppy this whole thing has been, how utterly sort of a sham this entire procedure has been. And now she's making a mockery of not only herself, but of the courts. And I want to point out this ancillary point as well, that the overt acts that these relate to, the reason why they can still stand in the pleadings is because there's different standards. So she needed specificity to address those 6 charges, those 6 counts that now have been quashed. But all you need to do is reference them in the pleading for the overt acts. That's why those remain. So again, a rookie, I mean, what is this, My Cousin Vinny, where it's like, look, down here, this is where we do it. That was her own courts. And then just a quick X's and O's point. These are the options, by the way. So we reindict, they reindict the individuals with more details provided, right? Essentially, like, you meet the requirements. Or she could appeal the ruling, and the judge has said that he would let that appeal go through because he also has the choice of waiting to the end of the trial. So that remains to be seen, what happens next.
And Jonathan Serrie mentioned you could have superseding indictments, but that would all mean delay. So interesting decision-making for Fani Willis here.
Well, look, Tom Dupree, former federal prosecutor, told me last hour this is a win for Donald Trump and the defendants because 3 of those dropped charges were against Donald Trump. So what's interesting about that is he's been racking up those wins. And they may seem like they're small, but it's eating into the narrative that the left has had, that the indictments will slow him down and that he won't be able to run. Well, now they are both presumptive nominees, Biden and Trump. And that isn't working out quite the way they saw it. Now, he does have some court dates coming up, and let's not be, shy about the fact that it could get bumpy for him. It could get bumpier for Biden with the border. So it's going to be interesting. But how this plays a role today is a victory for Trump and those defendants. It's another kind of check in the boxes down the line for those defending President Trump, because Fani Willis has turned out to be more drama outside the courtroom than in.
And we all look forward to seeing Judge McAfee's decision, which could come any time up until Friday. He said Friday's the cutoff of whether Fani Willis is disqualified. And hinging on this is the standard he uses. If he uses appearance of a conflict of interest, much easier to meet. It's what a reasonable person would perceive as a conflict, which many reasonable people would look and say there's a conflict there, or actual conflict of interest. That would need to be proven that, 1, this relationship began prior to the case, and number two, that Fani Willis directly financially benefited. So that's a much higher bar.
I've liked the judge so far. I mean, having watched a lot of these proceedings and this ruling, I think is right. Emily, I think, is spot on. She's exactly right. I think there was a lot of political pressure to get as many indictments against Donald Trump as possible. They wanted the highest count possible. So much of this is about timing, and what this does is it delays it. They can refile it, but November is the deadline, essentially. We're going to know who the president is or who is not, and I think there's political pressure to get this done as fast as possible, not administer justice.
When do we hit that point? Is it June?
Well, people say the election is in November. It's really not. It's the end of September, because that's when early voting starts.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's the election. The election is the end of September.
That's a big deal. You know, Tammy, and then all of this comes back to public perception, because this is in the middle of an election. And, you know, I just was reading the Associated Press and their reporting of this morning, and just one line stuck out to me. They said, you know, she's using the RICO statute, and then there's this sentence they use. The case uses a statute normally associated with mobsters to accuse the former president, lawyers, and other aides of a criminal enterprise to keep him in power. That's the Associated Press.
Yeah, and that was the point. This has been their campaign. And remember, what they all thought was going to happen at the beginning was that this would crush Trump psychologically. It would crush his supporters. It would be over. This was the narrative. And then we saw the opposite happening. But that's why it was like throwing the kitchen sink and all the noodles on the fridge. Everything that would stick would have to go, thinking that's all that it would take. That would give them the time they needed, because that was the campaign. So this becomes now about credibility. Her credibility with the other issue about her own behavior, about what she campaigned on, about being a legitimate person who wouldn't have affairs with people in her office, combined with this is what you do. And of course, when you find out that you just threw it into the sink, you didn't know what you were doing, perhaps, to your point, it means that the American people feel more confident in President Trump at this point.
Can I say something real quick? The reason I asked June is because I'm wondering if you have to get it in before those conventions start. Because if it looks like that narrative isn't sticking, and the Democrats have to do something else, I mean, they can't make them any younger. So what are they going to do? Will they appoint somebody? Will they vote for somebody else at their convention?
They'll switch him out at that point.
We'll see. Well, we are watching, and Friday is coming quick. We will cover all the breaking news on the Fani Willis case.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.